Hey guys, Dano here, and welcome back to Portal 2 playthrough part 5. So, today I've got some good stuff to talk about. Looking at, somebody mentioned the MMO PC console thing. As far as it's an issue that I left out that PCs have going for them, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I've talked about this a little bit in something else, maybe on the website or somewhere, but it's definitely a huge factor, so it's worth mentioning. Real quick here, I actually ended up dying. I left this first part in. I tried to use this little camera as a shield, and it did block a couple shots, but it just doesn't work, so don't try it. Anyway, yeah, the MMO thing is absolutely massive. I mean, anyone who's played video games the last, 6-7 years has probably heard of something called World of Warcraft and knows that they have 12 to 14 million subscribers that pay around $15 a month, which equates to, just dump truckloads of cash arriving at Blizzard every day, and, they don't know what to do with all that money. It is a huge source of revenue. It's why BioWare is trying to break into it with their whatever it is, Knights of the Old Republic dealy, and we'll see what happens with that. But no one else has been to topple WoW or Blizzard for a while with that. But that is such an amazing source of revenue. Good lord. Yeah, $15 every month continually. Jesus Christ, 12 million people for the last I don't know how many years, 6, 7, 8. I don't know what it is at now. Yeah, and on a bit of a side note, I mean, that kind of money coming in, I mean, that's why game companies want to push out games as fast as they can. I mean, it doesn't, at least in their eyes, it doesn't seem to make financial sense to put out a game that lasts for 5 years. They want to put out a new game every year and charge you just as much as they did last year. Fuck expansion packs, just put out a new game. Anyway, that's what COD's been doing, and as everybody knows, Blizzard Activision have merged together, and no surprise there. So, anyway, so back to the whole console thing with that. Basically, because consoles don't use the mouse and keyboard support, they can't run MMOs. It's as simple as that. There's no way that a controller can use the amount of buttons, or you can't come up with the amount of button configurations that you need in order to play an MMO like World of Warcraft. I think a few of you know that, especially Bruce and I did dabble in that for a while. Well, more than dabble in it, but anyway, we would run out of button configurations, even with a full keyboard and mouse with whatever 6 buttons on it. And anyway, you don't even have enough buttons with a keyboard, so good luck trying to find enough buttons on a controller. It's just not going to happen. You're doing too many things at once, and that is a huge driving factor behind PCs at the moment, and also a huge factor that is influencing on whether or not consoles will be getting mouse and keyboard support in the next generation of them. I've talked a lot about it before. It's putting in, the mouse and keyboard is going to change around things. I mean, that will be a landmark day in the history of consoles. It will forever change things. But I have a really hard time, for no other reason than simple finances, to think that consoles are not going to utilize mouse and keyboard support the next time around, because looking at WoW's, 12 million subscribers at $15 a month, it's simply way too much money to pass up. It's just, I can't imagine. I mean, look, we're looking at consoles that have been out right now. I mean, before we get out a new generation of consoles, we'll be pushing probably, somewhere around 10 years or so. And I can't imagine consoles coming out whenever it is that they do, hopefully by, 2013, something like that, maybe 2014. I can't imagine having a console come out, say 2014, and not getting keyboard support until the next new generation of consoles in 2025? That just seems insane. to use a controller for the next 20, 30, that's just crazy. I mean, the whole idea behind a controller in the first place, like controllers came around before, they had, I don't want to say before they had keyboards because that's not true, but controllers came around before, we really had computers as we know them today. So I think eventually controllers will be a thing of the past. I think eventually we'll see something that's more modified to use for game systems in general, because even a keyboard seems kind of silly sometimes, but whatever, that's kind of off. That's kind of getting out there, so whatever, we'll see what happens, but I think they'll use mouse and keyboards for the next gen consoles, because that's too much money to turn down. And same thing, WoW, God, can you imagine how much they can expand their player base? We've talked about it a little bit in the last video with the price for PCs and whether or not that's real or exaggerated or something like that. It's cheaper to buy one device as opposed to two. So, gosh, that would be fantastic to just have one console that does, everything. It does your video games, does your MMOs, does your regular stuff. You can watch your Netflix, do whatever. That would be awesome. So hopefully we will see that, and like I said, big economic incentive to do that. Let's see, I also wanted to talk about, somebody mentioned something about PCs have a modding advantage, and I don't know that I would necessarily I don't necessarily think of it as like a modding advantage per se. I'm going to tell you why. So, basically, yeah. I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself. I've mentioned before in other videos, this Portal 2, it's funny that it's in Portal 2 where I'm talking about it. I have a number of people that I have played with who have gotten positions at Valve because they use the level development software, and then there are a variety of different game conferences that go on, and basically Valve goes and tours these, and they're like, oh, hey, sweet levels that you guys made up that you're showcasing here at this wonderful conference. Would you like to work at Valve? And so that's how they got their job. And that was, that's a version of modding, I guess. But where, and that's where Counter-Strike first got its roots as well. Which, Counter-Strike's been a little popular. That's sarcastic, by the way. So. But where I've seen modding and, that sort of customization, where I've seen that go with computers recently, I actually haven't been too thrilled with it, to be honest. I've talked a lot about it on my website, went back and forth with a guy in the comments there talking about the console base versus the PC player base. Well, you look at a game like say COD Modern Warfare 2, and the game on consoles is basically set up for 6-on-6 or something like that. But then on PCs, the normal servers you're finding are like 32-on-32 or 20-on-20, something fucking insane. It doesn't make any sense to play with that many amount of players. It's just a total clusterfuck. There's no way to sort out who's good and who's bad. As it is, the game caters to high damage, high rate of fire weapons, and it's hard enough as it is. Instant respawn, frag X3, shit like that. And putting in 20v20 or 30v30 is absolutely insane. And giving people the customization to make servers like that, I just feel like ensures you have this massive spread of servers, and then it becomes harder to pick out the baseline. What do we gauge? The best type of game to play, or to give us game type? Is it capture the flag, or is it 20-on-20, or is it real skill 10v10? And people disagree about it, and then you end up with all sorts of different servers doing all sorts of different things. A good example of this, I just downloaded Bad Company 2 the other day, and if you look at the players and servers versus console versus PCs, you'll see that PCs have roughly, is it 2 or 3 times as many servers, but they only have like half the population base that consoles do. So, like, regardless of whether or not you think what I'm saying has any validity to it, like, just based off the numbers alone, you have 3 times as many servers and half the player base. That guarantees that, even if all the servers were set up, in my ideal world, whatever they happen that would be, even if they were all perfect, you're guaranteed to have fewer players per server. And what ends up happening though is you have so many servers set with all the different modifications and all the different settings, and that's nice. But like I said, the downside is you lose that standardization, and it's hard. It's impossible to find a game of like COD with like 6-on-6. It doesn't exist. And I'm worried that the same thing's going to happen to BF3 when it comes out. Like, once again, build the game as like this 32v32 grudge match, and as someone who played the shit out of not only Battlefield 1942 and Battlefield Vietnam, and won championships all over the place, like, the game was set up for maybe 10v10. Any server that you went into that had 30-on-30, number one, very few people had a system that could run anything close to that. You get massive frame issues. But two, like, you just don't have the vehicles or the points or anything to sustain that kind of a population running around. It's just totally nonsensical. The games are, I don't know if they're doing it, I don't know how this works out. I mean, it seems obvious that the games are not designed for 32-on-32. If they were, when you loaded up Battle Axe in 1942, you start out with more than like 3 tanks and an APC. I think you might have a Wesp too, I can't remember. But, you have fucking 15 tanks, and even that would be a tank for every other guy. I don't know, I don't get it. I think they're designing them for one thing and marketing them for something else. And it's something that the consoles will never understand what that's like in order to play with all that variability. Anyway, basically, like Battlefield 3 for consoles, you guys are getting 12v12. I don't know if you know that. Because you don't get to set up your own servers, which can be, like I said, good or bad depending on how you look at it. That means that you don't get the customization, but at the same time you get the stability and the baseline set up so everybody's playing on the same thing all the time, and when you load up on that server, you're getting a 12-on-12 game, and you're not going to have to worry about, what is the maximum player base set at, what are the current, how many guys are in there currently. Even if you join a server like, say, whatever it was, Battlefield, COD, Bad Company, whatever, on PC, you have to look at not only how many players are in there currently, like what is the maximum amount of players who can go in. You can find like a server that might have like great 6v6 going on, but maybe it's just not popular at the moment, and in 15 minutes it's going to blow up, and it happens all the time. Oh, hey, it's 6v6, Joe and I put 7-on-6, wonderful. And then in a few minutes it's now, whatever, 15v, whatever, 18 or something like that, and it's no fun anymore. To make it clear, the reason why I don't think that's fun is, like I said, you get too many people in a map that's simply not designed for that amount of people, and it's really difficult to tell who has skill and who doesn't. One of the things that I think the COD style series of gaming has taken out of FPS gameplay is consistency, and they trade that off for the ability to load up into a server and, once out of every 20, 30, maybe more, 40 matches, you get some amazing kill streak, you get to brag to your friends about how you're so good, but at the same time, like, you don't have consistency. It doesn't, I don't know, in my mind that doesn't mean jack shit. Anybody can have a great game, but unless you can, consistently duplicate those results again and again and again, I don't know, to me it doesn't mean anything, but whatever, I'm not the masses, so let's see. One of the things I wanted to talk about was difficulty in gaming. So I put up a review that was talking about The Witcher, right? And regardless of whether or not you watched the review or even whether or not you agree with what I said, man, sometimes I'm just thrown for a loop when I read different stuff, or I get into arguments with different people. So basically, like, I don't know, not everyone is going to feel the same way about video games, right? Some people are going to like things that other people won't. Some people will think some things are good, other people will think they're bad. But I guess, so my complaint, I guess, with The Witcher was that it lacks depth, and that combat takes on a one-dimensional aspect, and that one-dimensional aspect stays one-dimensional basically throughout the game. There are a number of different ways to increase difficulty in games, as most of you know, right? Some of them are starting off a game like one-dimensional and slowly adding new moves or new functionality, and slowly ramping up the difficulty and adding new depth and new layers to sort of hold your hand and walk you through, and you end up, whatever, you start off at level 1 and you have this basic attack, and by level 10 you have the ability to do this or that or this, and then now you're combining all these things, and it's just totally different combat system. Another way to do it is basically kind of similar to Batman Arkham Asylum, where you have the same basic functionality throughout the game, but you have an additional move or two. But essentially, the game, throughout the game, you're trying to master that system. It's one of those systems that's sort of easy to learn, hard to master sort of deal. That's another way of doing it. And what I feel like The Witcher did, my big complaint with that, was it started off one-dimensional, and I'm not done with the game. Actually, I'm having a hard time finding a drive to finish it, because I just feel like it's kind of silly. I'm bored with it. But I feel like it's very one-dimensional, and it's not getting any new dimensions. There's nothing that's being added to it. I don't know. I'm not really sure what they were thinking, to be honest. A lot of other frustrations with it too, but just talking about combat, it doesn't get anything. My complaints, day one about it are the same complaints, by the end of the game, except they're not as noticeable because the damage that you dish out becomes stronger and the damage that you take is less. But that doesn't make combat any more or less fun just because it's a little harder for you to die. Like, there has to be more to it than that. And what I find amazing is that some people will say that they like that. They like that challenge, but, fuck, I love a challenge more than anyone. Like, that's, I don't know. If I don't have a challenge, I don't like to play, but, there are good and bad ways of designing, like, a game challenge. I actually posted something about a sarcastic example of, like, creating a game that basically consists of smashing yourself in the balls with 2 anvils, you know what I mean? And if you package that up as a game and put Blizzard Activision on it, I guarantee that people would buy that. You'd have a certain percentage that people that bought it be like, oh shit, this game is amazing. This game is really tough. I can't believe that more people don't like this. It's very painful. It would be great to actually have my balls, but it's a consequence of playing this amazing game that they're gone now. It's too bad. But this is fucking amazing. I love the challenge. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's just not fun smashing your head against a brick wall, but I guess difference of opinion. So, anyway, that should do it for part 5, and stay tuned for the conclusion in part 6.